Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, one of the things that as I prepare for the new season and I'm looking and thinking of different lures, and I'm thinking of the lures and baits that have worked well for me in the past. A lot of times we talk about a lure that will go to a certain depth, and that's where you got to have it. That's where those fish are going to be. And on a particular day, that might be where they're going to be. But I think to be a really good fisherman, you've got to be able to sort of come to master, or at least be good at, fishing the entire water column. You've got to be able to fish surface lures in a way that's going to make those fish, if they're looking up and they're keying on up on top of the water activity, you got to be able to make your lure look real as it's coming across the top of the water. You got to either jerk it so that it sort of walks the dog, or you've got to stop it, let it sit there motionless, and then twitch it. This is a technique. Okay, well, maybe those fish aren't coming to the surface today, but maybe they're feeding on other schools of fish that might be 10 feet down. So you've got to have something, you've got to be able to fish something that works good at that level. And there's all different ways of doing it. It isn't just a question of getting your lure to that level and then reeling it in. Sometimes that works well if it stays at that level. Other times you have to jig it up and down, or you have to be able to manipulate it so that it speeds up and slows down and does things that are going to irritate them and make them strike. But a lot of times those fish are just laying down near the bottom. And even though their eyes are oriented upward, and we always talk about the fish that they're looking up all the time, they know darn well that most of their food that they're going to eat originates from the bottom most of the time of the year. I'm not talking about flies and stuff that come in off the banks, but most of the food, crayfish and other morsels, they're down near the bottom. And so those fish know to look down, to point their noses down and go down and root along the bottom. So you got to know how to fish the bottom. You got to know whether, if you throw out, you've got weight on your line to take it down, it goes to the bottom. Then what do you do once it's on the bottom? A lot of times the best way to fish is to let it sit there. Let it sit there. They saw it come down. They know it's down there and they're looking at it. And if you move it right away, that might just turn them off. They got to watch it and look at it and see if it looks real. And then you got to learn what's the best technique to bring it across the bottom. Should you just sort of crawl it? Sometimes that works. Sometimes you have to sort of hop it up and down off the bottom. Sometimes you just twitch it a little bit and then they call it dead sticking. Just let it sit there. A lot of times that's more effective. I remember my friend Bobby Marsall. One day I was down at one of our favorite places where we could actually fish along the shore. And Bobby has fished tournaments for years. He's an excellent fisherman. And he showed me with a spinnerbait. He says, Don, I want you to watch this. And he says, I'm going to cast this out there. And instead of reeling it in, I'm going to let it go to the bottom and sit there. And I'm thinking, a spinnerbait isn't intended to do that. It's a blade. It isn't even anything that they can bite onto and want to munch on. It's foreign. And yet he threw it out there, let it set on the bottom, and he let it sit there for 15, 20 seconds. He said, now watch. And he started to reel it up. And he hadn't brought that up 5 feet, and bam, that fish hit. That fish was watching it the whole time. My point is, if you get to the point where you're aware that those fish could be any place in that water column, they're going to be wherever it's most conducive for them. Where the temperature's right, where the oxygen's right, where there's food to eat, or there's protection, there's cover, whatever it may be, you got to learn how to fish the different depths and the different points from surface to bottom. And when you can do that and know what lures and baits to use at those different levels, you're going to become a much better fisherman. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.